Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. You know, sometimes the biggest conflicts aren't the ones you see on the news every day. Some are being waged right now, on the open seas, hiding in plain sight. And one single dramatic event has just blown the whole thing wide open. Now, this might look like a scene from an action movie, but I assure you it is very, very real. This one seizure, right off the coast of France, has pulled back the curtain on a massive, secret global operation. And it's not just about smuggling oil, it's about a whole new kind of hybrid warfare. So let's break down what is really happening here. All right, so let's set the scene. Everything kicked off just off the Atlantic coast of France. And at the heart of it all, a tanker with let's just say, a very murky past. So the ship in the spotlight here is the Borai, a 244-meter-long tanker. It was loaded up with 115,000 tons of Russian oil on its way to India, when suddenly, boom, French special forces boarded and seized it. The official line was serious offenses linked to European security, which, is pretty vague, but it hints at something way bigger than a routine inspection. And it wasn't a random check. This ship had a history of changing its name, changing its flag. It was practically a ghost, and its presence near sensitive areas had raised some huge red flags. And this goes right to the top. French President Emmanuel Macron himself weighed in, confirming just how serious this was. His words make it crystal clear. This is way more than just a sanctions violation. We're talking about a direct threat. But a threat from what exactly? Well, here's the thing. The Borai wasn't acting alone, not even close. It's a part of a huge, globally coordinated network designed for deception, a network that has a name, the Shadow Fleet. So what is a Shadow Fleet? Well, the concept is disturbingly simple, but it's incredibly effective. You buy up old, cheap tankers, you hide who actually owns them through a maze of shell companies, you get some questionable insurance, and then you use these ships to move oil for sanctioned countries, completely flying under the radar of international restrictions. But the really staggering part isn't how they do it, it's how many of them there are. We're talking about over 900 vessels. Now, this isn't just a handful of rogue ships. This is a massive, coordinated logistical network, operating in the gray zones of international law, all designed to serve one purpose. And these ships are old. We're talking an average age of over 20 years. That's not just a number. It represents a huge environmental risk. They often lack proper maintenance, they're poorly insured. They are basically ticking time bombs sailing through critical waterways like the Baltic Sea and the English Channel. And to be clear, this is no fringe activity. According to some estimates, about 1/6 of the entire world's active tanker fleet is now part of this Russian-operated shadow network. It's like a whole parallel shipping industry has been built, with a single mission, to defy sanctions and to fund a war. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. The purpose of this fleet, well, it seems to be evolving. It's not just about economics anymore. It's becoming a tool for a new, deniable kind of conflict. You see, on one hand, you have the clear economic threat, right? It funnels billions of dollars into Russia's war effort, blowing past sanctions. But on the other hand, a much more direct security threat is starting to emerge. These civilian tankers are now suspected of being used as mobile platforms for hybrid warfare. And these are not just theories. Remember that tanker that was seized, the Borai? Well, it was loitering near Denmark right around the time mysterious drones shut down Copenhagen's airport. Another shadow tanker is the prime suspect for severing a critical subsea power cable between Finland and Estonia. And military officials in Sweden have reported that these ships are bristling with unusual antennas, likely for spying. These aren't just oil tankers anymore, they are potential weapons platforms. So that brings up a big question. How on earth does a fleet of 900 ships hide in plain sight? Well, they have a playbook, a well-established playbook for deception. It's essentially a 5-step process. First, flag hopping. They constantly switch their country of registration to stay one step ahead of regulators. Second, they use complex layers of shell companies to make their true ownership nearly impossible to trace. Third, they just go dark, illegally turning off their tracking systems to simply vanish. Fourth, to add to the confusion, they spoof their location, broadcasting fake data. And finally, to hide the oil's origin, they do these risky ship-to-ship transfers way out in the open ocean. And don't get it twisted, this isn't just a Russian operation. The ownership web is completely global. While Russia is a huge player, you've got companies registered in Greece, the UAE, and China that are also deeply involved. It creates this incredibly complex network that is a nightmare for authorities to try and untangle. And this is where flags of convenience come into play. Countries like Panama and Liberia offer super easy registration with very little oversight, which makes them absolutely perfect for anyone who wants to stay anonymous and avoid accountability. Just look at how much of this chart is just other. It shows you just how fragmented and evasive this whole system is. All of this brings us right back to that French seizure. For months, Europe has been watching this shadow fleet grow. But now, by grabbing the Borai, they've shifted from just watching to direct confrontation. And believe me, this is a huge and very risky change in strategy. Which, of course, raises the central question, can they actually do that? Seizing a foreign-flagged ship on the high seas is a legally messy and really dangerous move. See, international maritime law is built on the idea of freedom of the seas. Generally, a ship is only subject to the laws of the country whose flag it flies. Now, there are exceptions. A country can inspect a vessel in its exclusive economic zone if they suspect something is off. But the Borai seizure happened in a real legal gray area, pushing the boundaries of what international law actually allows. And this is where it gets incredibly dangerous. We've seen this before. When the UK seized an Iranian tanker back in 2019, Iran immediately retaliated by capturing a British one. A tit-for-tat escalation at sea is a very real possibility, and Russia has already started escorting some of these tankers with its warships. So Europe is faced with an impossible choice. You can't just ignore a fleet that acts as both a piggy bank and a potential weapon for an adversary, but if you confront it, you risk triggering a direct conflict at sea. What started as a sanctions game has now become a very high-stakes naval standoff. This situation is incredibly tense, and you can be sure we will be watching it closely. If you found this explainer valuable, please help us out by hitting that like button, sharing this, and subscribing to the Global WarWatch Network. And we really want to hear from you. What do you think is the right move for Europe here? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and come join our community on social media. All the links you need are in the description. Thanks for watching.